All right, peace and much love, Zin Uru here. Welcome to the latest message from the Minista. This week's message from the Minista is True School Contemplation. True School Contemplation. We're going to be getting into what it means to contemplate our lives, what it means to contemplate certain philosophies, what it means to contemplate certain sayings and teachings from the masters, and really what it means to contemplate hip-hop. Since we are hip-hop, hip means to know. It's a form of awareness, and hop is a form of movement. And I think it's very important for our awareness part of it, for our hip, for our knowing, for us to have the ability to still contemplate. Contemplation was something that was very important to our ancestors, and really in all of human history, really up until recently with the advent of television and then of course the internet. So I just wanted to, well, first of all, let me welcome everybody here. It's good to see y'all here. What a week. It's already 2022. The new year is here. I've released a message from the Minista already last week, which was during the new year, but it was filmed on New Year's Eve of 2021. So this is the first filming of Message from the Minista for 2022. And had a lot of different ideas actually coming into this week for what the Message from the Minista was going to be. And so, I picked up the I Ching, the Book of Change, the I Ching Chinese Book of Change. And today, or earlier on this afternoon, I was like, well, which one of these subjects? I got a few subjects, kind of worked out for future messages from the Minista too. I was like, which one of these is the one to talk about tonight? And so I opened up the I Ching and I just did a mystery pick, and it opened up the contemplation. And I was like, such an interesting subject, because that's what I've been doing all week, is contemplating what is the message from the Minista going to be this week. I don't know about you all, but this week has been a week of great revealing for myself. Just the amount of knowledge, the amount of understanding, the amount of insight, the amount of awareness that happened this week was profound. I mean, rapidly profound, like, 2 or 3 things a day that maybe even last, sometimes it takes a week to get certain things, but just day in and day out and just waking up to all of these different things, these different changes. It seems that 2022 is going to be a year of rapid change. And so, with the pace of life itself, what we have to do is we have to keep up with life itself. When life is coming at us rapidly, it's good for us to keep up with life. But when we're keeping up with life, they call it Professor Hindsight, right? Professor Hindsight is always good. We can look back and say, oh, I could have done this, I could have done this, I could have done this different. But how many mistakes in our life can be avoided through just basic contemplation? How often do we spend time in contemplation? And time thinking is part of contemplation, but more than just thinking, like contemplating, what are the pros and cons of this decision I may be making? This philosophy that I have, that I'm holding on to right here, what does it actually mean if the doo-doo hits the fan? What is this? What do I know? What do I know? What does it actually mean, what I know? What am I capable of? What are my skills if this happened and if this happened? What is the meaning of life? Where is God? If I'm thinking certain thoughts, how do thoughts become things? Am I hip to my hop? What is my hip hop? What should my album cover look like? What should the content of my album look like? What producer should I work with? What would the artwork look like? What am I going to study this week? What am I going to learn this week? What am I going to do this week? I've got energy. How am I going to sleep best this week? I think that we go through life, and how often do we really think about why it is that we're doing what we're doing? And to be hip, we got to know the why. We have to know the why we do what we do. Either that, or we're just moving. We're just hopping around with no hip, with no awareness, with no knowing, with no intelligence. So if we're going to be moving around our environment, if we're going to be hip to our environment, if we're going to hip hop, we should contemplate the decisions that we're making. Part of contemplation can be done into research. We talked about studying just a couple weeks ago. Perform study. And contemplation, a lot of that can be into research. I find that when I'm researching a certain subject, that the longer ones, where it's like a 4-hour video on BitChute or YouTube or something, one that really requires a lot of new knowledge and information about a new subject coming in, I'll just sit back, light some incense, have the lights low and just concentrate on what's being said. But while I'm listening to what's being said on the YouTube, my mind is contemplating what are the possibilities. If the last great reset was only in the early 1800s and that the Civil War seems to be this giant power shift, not just in the United States of America, but on earth, that an entire civilization has been buried, these type of things, you start contemplating and thinking, what is the meaning of this? What is the meaning of this now that I have this new knowledge, now that this new information has been presented and uncovered, what does it mean? Now, for those of us who are hip-hop, those who are hip to their hop or becoming hip to their hop and waking up to their hip-hop self, what does it mean to be hip-hop? And you can pick up the gospel of hip-hop. We could pick up the gospel of hip-hop and you could say, well, Zin, to be hip-hop means to be aware. To be hip means to aware, and hop is movement. And hip means intelligence, hop means movement. So hip-hop is intelligent movement. And you're right, it is intelligent movement. Hip-hop is intelligent movement. But remember that even the gospel of hip-hop is just a finger pointing to the moon. If you're looking at the finger, as Bruce Lee said, he tells a student in the Enter the Dragon movie, he says, it's like a finger pointing to the moon. And the student looks at the finger and he slaps him in the back of the head. He goes, don't look at the finger. If you look at the finger, you will miss all the heavenly glories. So hip hop itself is pointing you somewhere to yourself because you are hip hop, right? But what is the meaning of you? Beyond the philosophy of who you are, what is the actual meaning of who any of us are? Who are we? Why are we here? What are we doing? Now, I said this earlier, our ancestors had a lot of time to contemplate. We did a lot of walking. Before the advent of cars, even horseback riding, we did a lot more walking back in the day. I always laugh, like if somebody made a joke about the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and they said, well, what is the movie about? He said, well, I watched the movie, and what I can tell you is it's a movie about a lot of walking. And I thought that was funny because, I remember before I had a driver's license that I was very, innovative about how I could get from point A to point B. If I wanted to get to my friend's house across town, me and my brother would be very innovative, whether it was bikes and bikes and skateboards or walking, because the way the city was set up, like there were certain roads that if we could get to their house quicker if we walked, but we couldn't skate those roads because they were old unpaved roads and it was gravel, so we couldn't take our skateboards down certain roads, but we could take our bikes down certain roads. But then if we had to come back, we had to, go up these hills and stuff with our bikes, so we knew we were going to be more tired, right? So, we used to just spend a lot of time navigating our circumstances, going around town, where are we going to walk, right? Plotting it out and planning it out. We would contemplate our actual movement and why we were moving. We used to have maps and before GPS on the phone, you would live in a major city and you would just know your way around. You would know east side, west side, north side, south side. You would know certain main roads, what roads to look for, what exits to look for, which freeways to get on. I'm not saying that doesn't exist anymore. But how often now do we even ask for directions? We don't need to now. We have GPS, right? But we used to call people on the phone, and, let me talk to your dad, then, go to your friend's house. Let me talk to your dad, then let me get directions. Or my dad would let me get directions from their dad, and we get directions or whatever it was back in the day. But see, the idea here is that pre-technology, we would contemplate our movement. We would thoroughly be thinking about our movement more than we do now. Because the computer and the GPS and the cell phone and all this technology and things, it's taken away our contemplation time. Instead of contemplating what certain things mean in our life, like we're dealing with, relationship issues. Instead of contemplating, what it is that we just went through, we can jump on YouTube and watch thousands of hours of relationship advice or any kind of advice, really. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It's a tool. It's a tool. These are all tools. But the paradigm has shifted. I was born in 1973, so growing up in the 70s and 80s and 90s, before cell phones and before internet and computers, it was just different. Was it better? I think it was better. I think it was better. I would rather live in that era than this era. If it was to come down, you have to choose this era or that era. Because there was more human connection. There's just more human connection. There's just more humanity back 20, 30, 40 years ago now. 50 years ago now. But we have to adapt. We have to adapt to these coming changes in these coming times, The Tao Te Ching, the Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu, that's a book of contemplation. Lao Tzu wrote all that book in one sitting. He wrote that Tao Te Ching, but he was able to write the Tao Te Ching in one sitting. It flowed out of him because these were concepts, these were ideas that he had been contemplating his entire life. While he was walking the countryside, while he was working, tilling soil, working with his hands, building, watching the seasons, watching the movement of different animals, listening to the wind, watching the fire, watching water. So he had this time to contemplate these things, and then he sat down and just wrote one of the most amazing books on peace and the universe and the nature of life itself. Very short book, but so profound because of the time of contemplation that took place. And I think back to when I was a kid, right? I'm going to talk a little bit about my childhood because it's just, I don't know how, I know that my audience now includes a lot of folks who's in their early 20s, right? And so you grew up with the internet, you grew up with the cell phones, you grew up with this. Most of you did. And so back, I was thinking I remember getting home from school when it was just pouring rain, it'd be just pouring rain in the middle of the winter and cold. And we'd already played football after school, or we played, during PE or whatever. We already played football. I got wet and muddy and walked around with wet shoes at school, because I like to play outside even in the rain. But, getting home and then, getting home from school and we were called latchkey kids. Me and my brother were called latchkey kids, meaning that we had, there's a term that was just running around in the 80s, latchkey children. And a latchkey kid was basically both your parents worked or if you're, from a single parent, your parent worked, you had nobody to come home to. And so me and my brother, we loved it. It was fucking great. With no parents at home. We had rules we had to follow, but we were good at, we were sneaky little boys But anyway, so I just remember certain afternoons coming home, knowing my parents wouldn't be home for a little while, and there'd just be pouring rain. I would just open up the window to my room, just lay on my bed and put an album on, right? Put an album on because I didn't have, I had a cassette, I had a boombox, just a cassette player and a boombox. And the record player was out. It was like a family entertainment center in the family room and records. And we had to be really careful with the record player. My dad wasn't allowing us to mess up the needles and just play our records. But we did have our boom boxes. And so I would just put a tape in, cassette tape in, and just be listening to music or just turn on the radio station and just be staring out the window at the rain, for hours. Sometimes have a sketchbook and just be doodling, even doing homework or whatever it was. But there was no digital screen. My parents didn't allow television in the room. We couldn't really even afford to have extra televisions around. Televisions used to be expensive back in the day, right? And so we didn't have TV in our rooms. We had our boombox and our cassette tapes. We had books, but even books, you read certain books over and over again, And I was a very active kid. Me and my brother we'd love to go outside and play basketball. We played football, baseball, whatever. We just played any kind of sport we could get in. And skateboarding was really our favorite thing. But, the time would be spent contemplating. Even walking to and from school, we had this long walk where we were just kind of by ourselves. All our friends lived closer to the bus stop, and we just keep walking and walking, get home. But we'd talk about our day at school, talk about whatever it was. And it was a slower paced life. It was a life of contemplation, a life of thinking. I grew up thinking. And I didn't really realize, that was a gift of its time. Each era that we're born into has certain gifts and certain time gifts that we're given. And so as I got older, I learned to walk to school, and it was like an hour and 10, 15, 20 minutes for me to walk to and from school when I got into high school. And so certain days I would just choose, I'm going to walk home from school today, and I'll walk across this long town for miles. And with nothing, with nothing. There's no head. Like I had a Walkman, but batteries were expensive. Like I couldn't just be affording to have Walkman batteries fresh all the time. And a Walkman would burn out those AA batteries. People think phone batteries are hard, but at least we could plug in a phone, right? Or an iPod, plug it into the wall and it gets charged. But back then those batteries had to cherish those batteries. And like, when was I going to use my headphones? When was I going to use my Walkman? Same with the boombox. You can fill a boombox with like 6 double D cell batteries, or 10 of them even, or 8, or whatever the size boombox was. You're talking $15, $20 worth of batteries, and those batteries would burn out quick, especially if you were carrying around the boombox. So, like I said, it's like, man, where are we going to spend this? So, I just kept my boombox at home where I could plug it into the wall and not waste the battery juice, because batteries were precious growing up. And you might have a certain set of batteries, AA's, that you got 3 or 4 different things that you want to use it for. So the point being is that we had a lot more time to think in the era that I grew up in. And it was a good thing. We used to appreciate albums, and I find myself now, with the exception of certain artists who can make great albums and certain classic albums that are good from front to back, that it's a single-driven society now. You go on the YouTube, you just pick the singles, and even on YouTube it's so distracting because there's advertising and plopping up here and there, and then people use whatever sounds, whatever app is that they're listening to music on, but it's very seldom is it albums. But we used to have to listen to the whole album. You put the tape in, listen to it from front to back. You put even the CDs, when the CDs came out, you could put it on shuffle, but it was the CD. It wasn't until I got much older and started making my own money and working full time that I got a CD player with 5 CDs, and you hit shuffle, but it would be whack. It'd be like, it would be moving around between these 5 CDs. So and the purpose of why I'm just kind of reliving this was part of the contemplation this week, was just contemplating how far things have gone in the 48 years that I've been here on earth and in earth, that I've been here in earth. And, contemplation is such an important part of our lives and of our living. This is why I love driving cross country. This is why I love road trips. How many of you out there, when you're out on a road trip, you really get a lot of thinking done, and sometimes when I need to think, I just go out an evening drive or a nighttime drive and go out and drive for 2 hours with no destination in mind. Just go out and drive and allow the mind to be free and think. Walking is another way of contemplation. Walking is a great way to contemplate. Sitting in nature, watching water, contemplation, watching the wind. All of these things work, and even in the city, even in the busiest cities. I've been in the busiest cities in the world touring with the Temple of Hip Hop. Chicago, New York, Amsterdam, London, San Francisco, Los Angeles. All of these major metropolitan areas and things, there's peace everywhere and time for contemplation if we take the time. I remember being in downtown San Francisco in the Embarcadero district and just busy, just cars, horns honking, sirens going off, helicopters, just city noise, people, and air conditioners and the hotels, all of this. And I'd wake up and I'd want to go out and experience the city and climb up onto the roof. I remember just sitting in the Lotus on top of the roof on this building in San Francisco with all the noises of the city. And the city noise is wonderful to meditate to. Even gunshots were going off. I heard some gunshots. But just sitting there in that meditative zone and just all of a sudden realizing that all sound is wave frequency. And that sitting even on the top of a building in the busiest part of San Francisco, There's a certain peace that came over because all of the noise blends into just waves and waves of noise. And there's a rhythm to the wave when we can hear it. And we can contemplate where it is we are in life and what it is that we're doing. And that's why I wanted to call this true school contemplation. I was going to call it old school contemplation, but I've realized it's the true school contemplators out there. It's those of us who take time to contemplate life and the meaning of life and contemplate certain decisions that we've made or that we're going to make and the repercussions that those decisions may have on our lives. Breaking up with somebody. A lot of times people just bounce from one relationship to another relationship to another relationship without ever taking the time to contemplate what happened in the previous relationship, what worked, what didn't work, why did it end, what could I have done differently? You see what I'm saying? This is so important, and it's something that's getting lost. Why? Because they want to make technology smarter and they want to make people dumber. And if people aren't contemplating anything, not thinking about anything, they're going to become dumber. And we can see that in the world right now. Very few people want to actually think through what's actually happening in the world. And because they want to just give their power over to somebody else, they think that these so-called experts, these white-splainers, white-splaining everything, these white experts, white-splaining away everything, they're like, well, that scientist thought about it or that politician contemplated about it. I don't really have time to think about it. I'm just going to do what they say because I got bills to pay. You see how that works. And so for my nobility out there, especially those hip hoppers, and you get hip to your hop and you found your purpose in life and you're working towards your purpose and you're mastering your craft, contemplate the next move that you make. Reinvent yourself from time to time. Contemplate where you've been. Contemplate where you are going. That is being hip to our hop. That's giving our movement direction. I'll put this up on the screen right here. This is the definition for contemplate and contemplation. And a couple interesting things here. This is from the American Heritage Dictionary, 3rd edition. And so we'll just start with contemplate. Contemplate, it's a verb. Contemplated, contemplating, contemplates. To look at attentively and thoughtfully. Okay, to look at attentively and thoughtfully. See, this is different. This is where contemplation becomes a thing. And you might want to even take notes when you're contemplating. You might want to have a piece of paper to write down certain ideas that we come up with while we're contemplating. Because we're looking at something attentively and thoughtfully. We're actually thinking about something long enough that we can think of the different possibilities. If I say yes to this, what could the outcome be? If I say no to this, what would be the outcome be? And what I love about contemplation is it's a great time to practice detachment, non-attachment. Because while we're contemplating, we can think of some very difficult circumstances, but we don't have to be attached emotionally to our contemplation, because contemplation allows us to see different outcomes without being emotionally attached to those outcomes. Definition number 2, this one's great. To consider carefully and at length, meditate on or ponder. To consider carefully and at length, meditate on or ponder. See, there's consideration, there's careful consideration that's involved in contemplation, carefully considering what may or may not happen, carefully considering what the next move will be, and thinking about it at length, and to meditate on it and to ponder it, not just to come up with the first easy answer that comes along, but digging deeper into what the meaning of it is. Like the book of Revelations, contemplating the book of Revelations is something that has a profound effect, because people will say, oh, this is what this means and this is what this means. But when you contemplate it deeper, you see that there's a code in there with all the great religious texts, with all of the great writings and philosophies. They are made to contemplate, to ponder, to consider carefully and meditate on. Contemplate, definition number 3, to have in mind as an intention or possibility. This is where to ponder and meditate. Once again, this is getting into the creative visualization aspect of it. To have in mind as an intention. When we set our intention, it's because we've contemplated, and then we say, this is okay, I want to go to point B. I'm going to arrive at point B. I've contemplated how I'm going to get to point B. Now I'm going to set my intention to get to point B now that I've contemplated it. And here we go, and we will move forward. That's being hip to our hop. It's to create space for observing. Auguraries. An augur is somebody who finds a temple, who delineates time and space for a temple. So, an augur, an ancient augur, is someone who would contemplate. Contemplation, the act or state of contemplating. Thoughtful observation or study. Meditation on spiritual matters, especially as a form of devotion. Meditation on spiritual matters, especially as a form of devotion. I would say messages from the Minista, that's what these are. These are contemplations. Every single one of them is a contemplation. We're contemplating ideas. We're contemplating words. We're contemplating, meditation on spiritual matters, especially as a form of devotion. And intention or expectation. What are our expectations? What is our intention for the contemplation? Why are we contemplating it? And to be contemplative is disposed to or characterized by contemplation. So we're all being contemplative right now while we're studying, while we're contemplating the word while we're contemplating the word contemplation, we are being contemplative. We are giving a contemplation, a member of a religious order that emphasizes meditation. Hey, that's me. I emphasize meditation, right? So we can see there that it's just to think about things on a deeper level. Really, that's all the contemplate is to think about things on a deeper level, to see it from different angles. And while we were reading those definitions, I mentioned it's a great time to practice non-attachment and to be detached from any kind of results. I've realized this over the years with contemplation, is that it is a great place to face your fears. Face the fears in the mind and the heart and the soul first. And then you won't even have to face them. Once you overcome the fear inside, the fear doesn't happen on the outside. The only time the fear happens on the outside is when we haven't defeated it on the inside first. That's profound. But think about this. Think about if there's something that's worrying you, this is a great exercise, and this is a wonderful exercise. The Gospel of Hip Hop talks about, debate your doubts, dish your disbeliefs, right? Face your fears, debate your doubts, dish your disbeliefs, okay? And so we come up to it and we got a fear, man, I'm going to face my fear, right? And sometimes that might be like, I'm afraid I have stage fright. I got to just face my fear and grab the mic and get up on stage. But you can also face it by creative visualization first. It works every time. See, you can come up to a situation and like, I remember when I first read Behold the Pale Horse by William Cooper way back in the mid-90s, right? I read Behold the Pale Horse in 1994, but 98 I got my first copy of it that was mine, that I wouldn't have to look at somebody else's. But anyway, so, I'm reading this book and I'm like, whoa, my mind's just being blown by the secret societies and what's going on in the world. And so all of a sudden, I started thinking about, I saw William Cooper after the Patriot Act got enacted. He got murdered at his own home. I started contemplating what it means because I've always been outspoken against, the New World Order. Once I found out about it, I started singing songs about it. Once I started rhyming way back in 2005, all my albums started rapping about it and empowering ourselves beyond and past that. But there used to be fear that came with that. And that's deliberate. They put books out like that to get people afraid of their so-called power. And so, I used to keep that fear outside of me, be like, oh, I'm going to be afraid. I'm going to keep saying it and saying it. And then as I realized, like in my meditations, I used to meditate and be very clear-minded. I realized that by kind of just not facing fear, they would just kind of float outside of me and they'd always be ever present. So I embrace those fears, right? We can embrace the fear while we're contemplating, while we're meditating. We can imagine the worst possible outcome, the worst possible situation in anything that we have fear of in life. What is the very worst thing that can happen to me in this situation? And it may be death. Well, then let's get over the fear of death. First, remember, if you're afraid of dying, you will be. Those afraid of dying are afraid of living. Anyone who is afraid of dying is afraid of living automatically. You will fear life if you fear death. Transcend the fear of death and you transcend the fear of life. You no longer fear life because death is just an illusion. So face the death. If you're afraid of death, you face the death in your mind. What's the worst death that can happen? And your mind can go crazy, right? We could contemplate crazy things. What's the worst thing that could happen? They could bust in this house right now with machine guns and put a boot to your head. Pop, pop, the zombie apocalypse. There's all kind of movies about zombies, right? What's the one? The Waking Dead TV show they had. Too gruesome for me, but I watched a couple seasons on and off of that, and I was like, man, they're kind of showing you what the future could look like. Mad Max, another great one, right? Mad Max, the Mad Max series with Mel Gibson. These kind of fears that people may have about a so-called apocalyptical type future, will see yourself surviving in those situations if you are afraid of it. Not everybody's afraid of the same things, but we all have certain things that we may intimidate us, that we may be afraid of. And so when we face those fears within us, and we overcome those fears because we can use our imagination and put ourselves in those situations and say, oh, if this happened, this is what I would do. I know I'd be good like this. I know. And you start outthinking any of the fear. You're facing the fear. If you start having doubts, that's another time to be contemplated. Oh, I have all these doubts about myself. Well, go in deep. Face your fears. Debate your doubts. You start having the doubts. Oh, yeah. Oh, what, you think this? Really, you think this? Word, you think I'm going to fail? I'm talking to myself. Zin, you think I'm going to fail? No, you're wrong, Zin. Zin Uru never fails. Zin Uru is a success. That's how you debate your doubts. If you have doubts, contemplation is a great way to face those doubts, because doubt is also another form of fear. Dish your disbeliefs, People have a hard time with their faith, and we walk through life and our faith gets weak. We got to start dissing those disbeliefs. Man, that's corny thinking. Man, that's whack. Man, that's weak. Call yourself out on weakness. Call yourself out on being corny. Call yourself out on your disbeliefs of yourself. If you don't believe in yourself, diss that self. Man, It's a great way to come to the realization that the inner man, the inner woman, is where the empowerment is found. Empowerment comes from within, right? And so when we are contemplating our lives, there will be certain times that we're going to come across a situation and say, I don't know if I should go there, or I don't know if I can do that. I know it might be have to leave behind my comfort zone. I'm really comfortable over here. This is my comfort zone. I got a great job that's paying my bills, but my purpose is calling me. And if my purpose is calling me, I may lose this job. And the future is calling me, and I may lose my comfort zone, and the future is calling me. Before that future gets there, while God is preparing us to get to that future, while the universe is preparing us to get to that future, take time to contemplate. Face your fears. Debate your doubts, dish your disbeliefs, get into that contemplative mode, and you don't have to be emotionally attached to any of it. Be detached emotionally through the creative visualization. Have fun with it. Start partaking time in it. Oh yeah, what's the worst thing that can happen to me if I quit my job and I follow my purpose? What's the worst thing that can happen to me? Instead of waiting to find out what the worst thing that can happen to you is, contemplate it. Work it out. Work it out. Work it out. Work it out of the system through the time spent pondering, meditating, contemplating. And then when you leave the old behind and you're going into the new, you've already thought about it, and you're not going to have to face those fears in the same way because you've already been prepared. It's God preparing you. And this gets to a deeper state of being where God is the one who manipulates us, and we stop trying to manipulate God altogether. We stop trying to tell God what it is that we're going to do, and we start listening and following what God wants us to do and what God is expecting from us, and what the greatness that God can see for us, because our own limited concepts can't see it. Our own limited thinking at times keeps us from the magnitude and the magnificence of what God can actually deliver us. Get out of your own way, Hip Papa. We must get out of our own way. Contemplation is a great way to get out of our own way. Because what we do is we sit down and we contemplate, or we walk, or we drive, or we run, or we jog, or we paint, or we listen to instrumental music. We take these certain things of contemplation, and then we think through the situation. We see the situation from the different angles. We put ourselves into positions. What does the success look like? Be prepared for the success. Success can take somebody out quicker than failure. I've seen it happen too many times. I used to not even believe that that was such a thing. But I've seen so many people's success take them out quicker than the failure. Contemplate your success most of all, because you want to be ready for the inevitable success of what you are working towards. But be ready for the success. A lot of people, it happens all the time. We see it in the NBA a lot, not as much anymore. But back in the day when they were given multi-million-dollar contracts early on, young dudes is coming up, they getting $30 million at 22, 23 years old, and then, they get the knee injury or whatever happens. We saw it in the hip-hop too, rappers getting these big deals, and then the albums don't hit, and they don't get the promotion no more, and all of a sudden that money that they burnt through is gone, right? It's the same thing with us. We have these life experiences. We have what God is giving us. All of a sudden we can we start experiencing success based upon the physics of our action. We start creating our success. We start, acting and behaving in a way that brings success. And then when we experience that success, if we're not prepared for that success, we'll be like those ball players or those rappers who burnt out and lost their fortune because they didn't know how to handle their success. Love's going to get you. Or you ever think about when you're out of here? Fresh gear, fly girls out of here, $5,000 love seat out of here. This is a single from the Teacher KRS-One. Go listen to it. Out of here. That's a great lesson for that. That's about contemplation, because do you ever think about when you're out of here? He knew the nature of the record industry. And although he was getting, large sums of money through record labels and contracts and record deals, he knew when he saw that this isn't sustainable, this isn't going to last forever. Let me prepare a way. Let me create myself in a way so that when that record label money's not here, I'm still wealthy. I'm still moving forward. I'm still living my purpose. And so we can see in the example of the teacher's life and the example of KRS-One's life, somebody who contemplated the future, so much so that he wrote the gospel of hip hop. Go back and listen to albums from the teacher, they're all lessons from Criminal Minded to By Any Means Necessary to Ghetto Music and the self-titled album and Edutainment and Return to the Boom Bap, but like the Edutainment, Return to the Boom Bap, the self-titled, that era when like Out of Here came out, listen to the lessons, because he's telling the whole community, get ready for when this industry falls apart, because he saw it. He saw the direction that it was going in. He knew it wasn't going to be sustained like it was back in the day. He could see, he witnessed it, he contemplated it. He's a philosopher, so he got into the philosophical sense and saw what the future was going to bring for hip hop. And so spot on and so accurate. The prophecies are accurate there. Go back and listen to those albums and then see how the hip hop community turned out. Some people listened to them. Most didn't, though. Most didn't. So I think about that as we're going forward in our lives, What are the warnings of prophets? What were the warnings that Bob Marley put into his music? About materialism, about hiding from God. What are the lessons that Martin Luther King, what was the warnings of Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Kwame Ture, Jesus Christ? What are the warnings that these great minds and these great teachers and these great messiahs of the past, what is it that they were saying to be aware of, and contemplate what they say to be aware of? Just contemplating the I have a dream it's a lifelong contemplation, because there's so much depth to it. Even though it's what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. 16 paragraphs long. 16 paragraphs long. That's it. It's not even a full chapter in a book. It's just a couple pages in a book. But the depth of it is there, the meaning of it, what it became, contemplating what it meant, watching the movement of hip hop from from the East Coast to the West Coast back to the South, tracing the movement of hip hop through the I Have a Dream speech. These are things to contemplate. Because contemplation is a form of intelligence. Contemplation is the highest form of intelligence because and we're going to see this when we read the I Ching that led us to this study today. We'll see that when we meditate upon things, when we ponder things, when we give careful consideration to things and ideas, that is the ultimate form of intelligence. We're not just learning from everybody else because we have to know ourselves first. When we're contemplating our movement, when we're contemplating our hip hop, our awareness and our movement, when we're contemplating that, we have to put ourselves in that picture. We have to be biased with our own views. We have to know ourselves. I know that if I go over there, I will be tempted. So therefore, I have to go over there. So let me face my temptation now. So when I get there to the club, instead of being tempted to drink, I'll be there for the business that I came to do in the first place, which is to rip the mic at the open mic tonight. Instead of being drunk, I know the temptation is going to be there, but I need to rip that open mic tonight. So let me face the temptation now before I even go to the club, get to the club, have no problem, grab the mic, blaze the crowd, job well done, purpose fulfilled. But that time, that contemplation is important to take. And I've noticed this with myself too. Really, it's something that 2022 is going to be dedicated to working with. My physical body, I'm dedicating 2022 to overstanding alkalinity and how to keep a healthy alkaline body. I keep myself on pretty much an alkaline diet, but there's just so much knowledge there. So 2022, I'm going to be contemplating, studying the alkalinity of the body, how to create alkalinity in the body, have a richer alkaline body and environment for my body, because the alkalinity is going to save the body, the physical body, from radiation poisoning, from microwave poisoning, from all the EMFs that we're getting hit with from our routers, to the 5G towers, to the phones that we're carrying around. Cars are like radiation devices. You drive an older car from the early 2000s or the 90s with no technology in it, you don't get as tired. You get in a car with a big ass computer screen and all these electronics running through the seats and running through it. You're like literally in a microwave oven, and it makes you more tired. Literally. I mean, I've had this experience before. I dig new cars, right? But there's a higher level of radiation in a brand new car than in an older car. So if you can only afford an older car, think about that. That's God's way of protecting you from radiation poisoning. And so this year I'm going to be contemplating radiation poisoning of the body, because that's what a lot of people are experiencing is radiation poisoning. And that the alkaline diet is a way of, and a rich alkaline environment of the body will protect the body from radiation poisoning and the cancerous cells that are created by radiation poisoning and the radiation burning of the cells. But I brought that up because along with that, this year's contemplation is deep like that. And I had something else I was going to say, and maybe it will come back to me later. But that actually puts there was another point for 2022 that's going to be the depth of what I'm contemplating. But that'll come back later. Wanted to talk about that alkalinity there. So let's put this up here, right here. This is the gospel of hip hop. Just continuing, and then we're going to close with the I Ching in a little bit. Just continue with the theme of, I don't know if I'll do all 18 divine performances, because I'm not sure which ones we've actually read and haven't read during the message from the ministers recently, but just kind of going along with this, perform intelligence here. While we're reading Perform Intelligence, realize that the contemplation is the way to really come to a high level of intelligence. And also realize that to be hip is intelligent hip hop is intelligent movement. Hip is awareness, is intelligent awareness. So while we're performing intelligence, we could even say we're performing hip. Divine performance, this is the third overstanding, the divine performance in the gospel of hip hop. written by the teacher KRS-One and presented to the Temple of Hip Hop. This is Divine Performance number 13, Perform Intelligence. Our intelligence is creatively inquisitive. See, being inquisitive, that's contemplative. That would be a synonym, that's synonymous with contemplation, inquisitive. Our intelligence is creatively inquisitive. See the creatively there? Therefore, practice asking questions, especially about the things that you are already familiar with. For it is the question that drives us towards our God, not necessarily the acquired answer. Asking the right questions leads to spiritual awareness and peace. At the start of one's quest for spiritual awareness, and see how it says right here, I was just say, asking the right questions leads to spiritual awareness and peace. Let me tell you, that peace that comes from contemplation, that is the time. It's time well spent, because peace is the ultimate. Peace in life is the ultimate. At the start of one's quest for spiritual awareness, one must ask the correct questions that will expand one's ability to acquire and apply correct spiritual knowledge. We must question God to know more about our God. For it is indeed true that your God will answer all of your questions with astounding accuracy. The Hipapa uses faith to see what is not yet physically there, and uses action to bring those things into existence. Intelligence, the ability to know and perceive, questions the two. Be careful. Question God, but never doubt God. Now look at this here, Hipapas. It says right here, the Hipapa uses faith. Remember, perform faith is one of the divine performances, to see what is not yet physically there, and uses action. Remember, perform action is another one of the divine performances, to bring those things into existence. So when we want to bring our faith and our action into existence, intelligence, or the ability to know and perceive, questions the two. See, we ask intelligent questions. Why do I believe this? What is it that I actually believe? Why is my faith? Why am I putting faith in this? Why do I not have enough faith in myself? Where is my faith in God? Do I have faith in hip-hop? I do have faith in hip-hop. What does my faith in hip-hop mean? See, these are the type of questions we can ask for faith. Same goes for action. What is the consequences of this action? What would be the failure of non-action? What would be the victory of this action? Why am I performing this action? What's the best way to perform this action? See how the intelligence gets brought into performing faith and performing action? It's the questioning that brings these, and it's the questioning that brings the other two into existence. We can see more clearly. And just as our faith sees and confirms what is not yet physically possible, our intelligence must ask questions concerning the possibilities of what is perceived to be possible. This is contemplation, my nobility. But do not allow the performance of your intelligence to override your faith. See, we're never going to know everything. We're never going to know all the answers, no matter how much contemplation we do. We will contemplate our whole lives, and when we arrive at the place where we leave this body, we are still going to have unanswered questions. And that is our faith. And God, this is the perfect design of the universe, because our faith in God, the perfect design of God, to have faith in God, ultimately, there's only one way to prove our faith in God, and that is by not knowing. When we don't know, we have an opportunity to walk or stand or run or jump or leap, but whatever it is, move forward and stand in our faith when we don't know. So contemplation is amazing, but know this, you will never know all the answers. Because what's the fun? It's so much fun to not know the answers, but still move forward anyways, because God got your back. God is looking out for you. And when our faith is in God, anything is possible. Anything is possible with faith in God. Do not allow the performance of your intelligence to override your faith. For we are guided by the questions we ask, not necessarily by the answers we get. Very important part of the contemplation right here, my nobility, when we're performing intelligence, when we're contemplating certain things. For we are guided by the questions we ask, not necessarily by the answers. And you'll notice that when answers come, that sometimes one answer will open up 10 more new questions. But once our intelligence has given its performance, it must be put back in its place in the dimension of question, perception, logic, and rationale. This is what it means to perform your intelligence. Do not allow your intelligence to just rule over your life. Apply its sharp inquiry and sense of perception when necessary to shape the reality that you truly desire. The reality that you truly desire, my nobility. Use your intelligence at times, but you still must walk in faith, because God is going to open doors. God is going to perform miracles in your life that you will not know. Walk in that faith, but be intelligent about your faith even. I'm going to go and I'm going to grab that mic and I'm going to spit the rod, and I'm going in faith that it's going to be well received tonight. There's going to be the unknown. Have no fear of the unknown. This is where faith is the light into the unknown, but be intelligent about going into the unknown. What does that being intelligent mean? Don't go into the unknown drunk. You're going into the unknown, and drunk is going to hold you back, or going into so like you've got a show, you've got your first set that you're going to be performing. You don't want to go there tired and hungover or anything like that. You want to be at your peak optimal condition. That's performing intelligence. Put that mind to work for you. Don't go to work for your mind. Put your mind to work for you. Direct your mind. Don't let it direct you. Let God direct you, and then you direct your mind where God is directing you. When God is directing you somewhere, you say, okay, mind, God is directing us over there. We will go over there. Now, what's the best way to get there? We hip-hoppers should pay more attention to how we view the world, because the solutions, and this is important. Wait, I'm going to just stop right here. This is so important for hip-hoppers to know, because we got these problems that the world is facing. We have the solutions to them. Most of the problems in society, we have the solutions. That's why we just shake our heads when we see these politicians who are dumb as fuck. They don't know shit. They don't know how to their solution is to give more big business and more money to big business and to have a big giant circle jerk with their money, We hip-hoppers, where we come from and what we've known and what we've experienced, we can run this way better. We can run things. And we hip-hoppers should pay more attention to how we view the world, because the solutions for many of society's ills lie inside of us. Hip-hoppers must question the so-called facts of the physical world. But after gaining an awareness of one's spiritual nature, question not, only believe the truth of one's spirit. As Colton reminds us, doubt is the vestibule which all must pass before they can enter the temple of wisdom. Perform intelligence, my nobility. You want to go and walk into the temple of wisdom. You got to pass through the doubt. You got to pass through the fear. Your promise is on the other side of your fear. Your purpose is on the other side of your doubt. Contemplate these things. See where it is. If you're stuck in life, contemplate why you're stuck, and don't be afraid of yourself. Don't be afraid of the hard answers. If you're not having success in relationships, don't be afraid of the hardcore answers that you might be one who has to actually make the change to bring healthy relationships into your life. You might have to face some really hard things that you don't want to have to face, but fear not, my nobility. This is why we contemplate. This is why we have that space. We don't have to judge ourselves in that space. We can face our fears, we can debate our doubts, and we can diss our disbeliefs in those times and space. This is where the contemplative life comes in. This is why, in our health section, we suggest that you go for a 10, 20-minute walk, couple 20-minute walks a day, couple 10-minute walks a day. Go out and walk 20 minutes a day on the daily. Get the heart rate up, get it moving. Don't plug in no music, don't have no device with you. Walk. Let the mind free. Walk out in nature if you're lucky enough to live near nature. Go out into the nature. Let the mind just be somewhere else besides sitting in a room or sitting in a car or sitting in an office or sitting at a job all day. Give the mind just 20 minutes to contemplate things. When driving, turn the music down or put some instrumentals on and contemplate. Turn off the talk radio or the podcast. Contemplate certain things. Now, not to say, I would say that even when I've noticed when I'm listening to certain things like I was speaking about earlier, I'll even be contemplating, watching the new Matrix Resurrections last week. mixed reviews on it. I have. There were certain parts of it I really appreciated though, but while I was watching the movie, I was in deep contemplation. I set aside that time. I was like, yo, I know, when I watched the originals, it was lights out, no noise, concentrating on this movie, focused on the movie, the first 3 came out. This new one, same thing. Waited till it was just going to be a quiet night. I didn't have nothing on my mind that I had to go and take care of. Just turned the lights down low, made some popcorn. I don't remember what I made to eat, but just turned on the movie, turned off my phone, turned everything off so there would be no distraction so I could contemplate what was being said in the movie. And I've noticed this is what I was going to say earlier. Remember I said 2022, the alkalinity of the body, but also the thought process of the mind. I'm realizing the addiction that social media has. And when we're checking our phone every time and scrolling through on the phone and always looking at the phone, I'm realizing that my mind bounces around from subjects like it is bouncing around through apps when I'm meditating now. That cannot be. That is unacceptable. For my level of discipline, for my level of consciousness, for my level of awareness, like just being aware of that, I'm like, man, I don't even know how anybody's going through who's just used to living that for years and years, just flipping on the phone and going through Facebook all the time. I don't do it even half as much as a lot of people I've seen, but I do it way too much. And so 2022, as I'm learning about the alkalinity of the body, I'm also learning about the power of the social media devices, because remember, they're designed to keep you on and keep your attention as long as possible. So if we're on social media, we're not contemplating our lives, we're contemplating social media and what everybody else's ideas and thoughts. I'm not saying there's not a healthy way to interact with social media, but 2022, this is the year that the discipline and the sight and the wisdom and the divine performance comes in to say, wait, hold up, I'm either going to have a healthy relationship with social media or no relationship at all. Because right now I don't know that I have a healthy relationship with social media to be out there with my nobility. We're all going through this, but I've realized that my mind at times, when I've spent too much time on social media, my mind is bouncing around ideas as opposed to following the train of thought and being more contemplative and organic with it. I know the difference because most of my life was spent without social media. So I only have a small percentage of my life as a microcosm to look at. Okay, this is the part of life for social media. Let me consider all this other time I spent without social media and how much easier it was to concentrate, because the mind gets rewired, the mind gets recircuited when we're flipping through social media and using our thumbs and just watching the screen move and the blinking and going and changing through apps and having to, this constant recognition, people constantly needing approval. It's attention-seeking behavior on social media. And it's kind of what it's for. Like, I don't think it's a bad thing for people to get attention. You got dope music. It deserves attention. You got something to say, it deserves attention. You got something to share, it deserves attention, I'm not against social media like that, but we have to have a healthy boundary with social media. We should have a healthy relationship with social media. And I know for me as a minister, that's this year, it's social media and alkaline. That's my, what you want to call New Year's resolutions. I got more things this year, but you'll see as these progress, it's going to be, social media, fasting, social media, healthy boundaries. Because for us to live a contemplative life, for us to really be hip and know why we're moving, we can't have social media just in our brains. It's like the matrix scroll, when the data's going down. We can't have that going on. We should be a higher level of consciousness, a higher level of people. Our music will improve. Less social media will make better music. Less social media will make you a better MC or a better producer or a better DJ or a better artist or a better philosopher or, a better teacher. Whatever it is you're doing, whatever your purpose is, maybe social media can enhance the purpose, but the purpose will enhance your social media. Social media won't enhance your purpose. Your purpose will enhance your social media, and that's the right perspective to have. Social media cannot enhance your purpose. I've learned this. There was too many promises about social media, and with their algorithms and their shadow banning and with their claws of control that they've gone on, with the major platforms and their censorship. They lied to everybody about the power of social media, because once people started getting popular on social media, they had to restrict that because they don't want freedom. They don't want freedom. Nobody, like Facebook, the last thing they want, Facebook or the metaverse or Instagram or Twitter, the last thing they want is the free flow of actual organic ideas. They want to control. They are literally Nazis. They are control. They are the control program. They are the control system. So if we have a purpose, we can enhance maybe our presence on social media, but we're still part of that control system. And they've admitted that they psychologically manipulate people to spend more conscious awareness and conscious attention on their applications. They've admitted this to Congress. It's just known. That's why metaverse is a big no for me. I'm never entering into the metaverse for any reason. There's no reason to go into the metaverse. It's a bad idea. The metaverse is garbage. What they're going to do is plug people into the metaverse and continue stealing more of the earth. If you've noticed, as the New World Order tries to tighten its grip, it's to steal more and more of the earth from people, close down more businesses, foreclose more homes, limit people's abilities to go out. That's what's been happening since 2020. Limiting people's movements, limiting people's options, limiting people's ability to go and move freely about the earth. They're limiting the earth from humanity. They're stealing the earth from humanity, and they want to steal the entire earth and plug your ass in and make you a battery. And that's real. This isn't theory. This isn't conspiracy. This is truth. They literally want to plug people in, die, get plugged in, but you do not own nothing, and you have no business on the earth according to them. Well, guess what? The earth, I am the earth. I am the walking earth. You are the walking earth. We are the walking earth. We are humanity. We are the caretakers of this earth, and I say no to the metaverse. For real. If you know me, know that if you are plugging yourself into that metaverse, I gotta be looking at you and just be like, I don't get it. It's a sellout maneuver. You're selling out humanity because you know that this is where it's going. They want to plug people in. You think there's freedom in the metaverse? There's no freedom on Facebook. They're restricting Facebook. They're restricting content. They're literally psychologically manipulating people's emotions. They're traumatizing humanity on purpose. They've admitted it to Congress. It's out there. You can go and see that Facebook is intentionally traumatizing humanity. And they were never told to stop. They never said they were going to stop. They're continuing to do that. The metaverse is going to be the most traumatizing experience humanity has ever faced. It is hell on earth. And believe that. Contemplate that for a while. A computer can't love you, and you can't love through a computer. Rise up, my nobility. We are humanity. God gave us an interactive universe. It's called the universe. This is fully interactive, fully functional. Why do I need a digital glove to feel some digital thing when I have a physical hand that can fill a physical book? Why do I need a digital hand that can spray paint on a digital wall when my actual hand can grab an actual can of spray paint and spray paint on a wall? Our soul, we're already interfacing through this reality through our body. This is the way the Creator gave us this. We don't need what the devil wants to give us, which is a virtual world. No, we live on earth. And they want to steal all of the earth from everybody. And they've been doing it, and you've been watching them do it. They are the colonizer. Now they're going to colonize the soul and the mind by plugging people in. Literally. Don't be fooled. Don't be stupid. Don't be ignorant. The future is looking back on those who are plugging into the metaverse and laughing at you. The future is not the metaverse. The future is the earth. The future is humanity. God will unplug it all when it's time. Talk about old school, true school contemplation. This is what we're contemplating. We're contemplating the future of our very soul, the future of our very people, the future of humanity. Don't be fooled by these liars and these devils, my nobility. They don't have your best interest in mind. God has your best interest in mind. Our community should have you be looking out for one another and be looking out for each other. The I Ching. Quan, put it up here on the screen. Wind over earth. Kuan, contemplation. This is contemplation. Kuan is I Ching number 20. By concentrating on the higher laws, you acquire the power that underlies them. In Chinese, the word Kuan, in Chinese, the word Kuan can mean either contemplation or setting an example. Now that's very deep. Contemplation or setting an example, depending on how it is pronounced. This hexagram incorporates both meanings. For what it teaches us to do is to set an example for others through our own contemplation of proper principles. And I'm setting this example today with technology to my nobility, humanity over technology. Human education against lies, the HEAL movement. This contemplation is to bring forth these proper principles. A fundamental fact of consciousness is that we take on the attributes and energy of that upon which we focus our attention. Ancient wisdom here, my nobility. Thoughts become things. A fundamental fact of consciousness is that we take on the attributes and energy of that upon which we focus our attention. So it's so important to focus our attention upon God so that we can become that which we focus our attention. In studying and meditating on the I Ching, we are concentrating on the underlying principles that govern the universe. Through contemplation of the wisdom of such principles as independence, detachment, modesty, acceptance, and tolerance, we begin to embody them in our own lives. Their power informs our actions and practices as we begin to have great influence as a result. This hexagram comes to indicate that you need to make a self-correction and return to contemplation of proper principles. By sacrificing the harsh judgments of your ego and asking the sage for guidance, you free yourself from hindering influences and increase your merit and thereby your ability to have an influence. It is in the quiet contemplation of what is correct that we become detached from anxious emotions about the situations that face us. This detachment gives us the balance and calm to choose solutions which are in accordance with the higher laws. In so doing, we gain the aid of the creative in everything we do, and others are drawn to this strength. Truly, we gain the ability to lead through contemplation of the principles of our own leader, the sage. Now remember, my nobility, the sage, that's the hip papa. That's the God self. That's the Christ within. That's the higher consciousness. That's the sage. The first line. Others may not yet recognize the correctness of following the truth. The superior person leads them to this by deepening her own contemplation. The second line. Do not take the situation to heart. The workings of the creative are complex and often unknowable. Slow progress will endure. Third line. And see, this is about patience, my nobility. The contemplations takes time. It's a divine performance of patience. Contemplation is patience. It takes patience to contemplate something, to see it through to its end, to create something. And when we contemplate the deeper meanings, then the reality of what we're contemplating comes more into existence. The third line, look not at the outward situations, but at the effects of your own thoughts and actions. Through self-contemplation and self-correction, you arrive at a proper understanding. Fourth line,
Those who understand proper principles will lead others with respect, tolerance, and gentleness. Fifth line. It is a time for examining and correcting one's own attitudes. By contemplating the good, you enable yourself to benefit from it. See, it's all about contemplating, examining, and correcting. Sixth line. The central truth that one gains the world by becoming blameless. Sincere contemplation is the means to this end. That's deep. Contemplate that one. The central truth is that one gains the world by becoming blameless. Sincere contemplation is the means to this end. The I Ching, book of wisdom, the book of changes. This is an excellent version of it. Up there so you can see. I'll put it up here so you can see. Excellent version. My favorite so far. I've read 3 or 4 different versions that I have. My favorite by far, the most recent purchase. But that was very deep because you could see earlier, man, I've been contemplating this metaverse for a while, and you can feel that fire, you can feel that passion, and feel that energy, what I'm talking about. There's no end to that. There's no end to that world, my nobility. And the contemplative life, the thoughtful life, the philosophical life, this is our birthright. It's our birthright to have the time to contemplate life. It's our birthright to not have to be plugged into anything digital. Our birthright is organic human being, the prime creative nature of who we are and what we are, back to nature. Our future is not digital. Our future is organic. Our future, even these messages from the Minista, these are a way of preserving this into the future through the technology, but this is an organic ministry. Every lesson that I'm teaching, I've learned through organic human living and organic human interaction. This isn't just me sitting at home or plugged into some kind of a machine and just sitting there digital 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. This is from going out and living life and experiencing life. Now, I don't know where the future is headed exactly like that with this digital prison they're building, with this so-called metaverse they're building, my nobility. But I do know our birthright is organic. Our birthright is nature. The earth itself is our birthright. We are stewards and caretakers of the earth, and they want to take us away from the earth and take the earth away from us and plug us into a metaverse. I say no. I say no. This is a great time to contemplate that because it's not here yet. It's here, but the magnitude of where they're wanting to direct it isn't here. My nobility, those MCs, those DJs, hip-hop is organic culture. Hip-hop is nature. Hip-hop is natural. Hip-hop, the 9 elements are the last of the human skills, not technology. You don't need no technology to do any of the 9 elements, even DJing. You don't need technology. You could be a DJ with a box and a wall and a piece of paper and your beatbox, and you can make sounds. You master the technology. Don't let the technology master you. We are the masters of the technology. That's the human skill, the mastery of the technology. It's not technological skills when the technology masters the human. We ain't about that. That ain't where we're going. There's no way that we can survive like that. Hip-hop is the last of the human skills. I don't need no technology to say, time and time again, as I pick up my pen, I got to ask myself, where do I begin? Before I was Zen, I was a slave to the system. It was 12 years of school and too much religion. I began working them 15-hour days out in the hot sun for minimum wage, and like a bird in a cage could escape when I tried, until I got the call that opened up my eye. And there was my teacher on the answering machine, calling me to the temple and out of my dream. And 1 month later, we met face to faces. And that very moment, I said goodbye to the Matrix. He said, yo, man, why don't you come on tour and find out what you came here for? I sold my work truck, I bought a used van, and I drove my ass into the promised land. That's only human skills right there. No technology needed for me to spit that. I could spit that in the dark. I could spit that anywhere. MCing is a human skill. Beatboxing, human skill. Fashion is a human skill. You could take certain pieces of clothing, it doesn't matter what it is, and change it and move it around and turn it into self-expression. Self-expression is a human skill. The opposite of depression is expression, my nobility. Contemplation will lead you to a higher level and a higher form of expression. That's why KRS-One is the greatest MC of all time. He's contemplated MCing more than anyone alive. There's no man alive who's contemplated MCing more than the teacher, KRS-One. No man alive has contemplated MCing more than the teacher, KRS-One. No man alive has contemplated hip-hop more than the teacher, KRS-One. Nowhere. Nobody has contemplated hip-hop more than the teacher, KRS-One. Nobody. See what I'm getting at? That's where the empowerment is. The I Ching was just saying, what we contemplate, what we put our attention to, is going to be what comes out of life. So put it to these high ideals. Put it to the high visions. Put the intention to God. Contemplate God. Contemplate your nature. Contemplate who it is and why it is you're doing what you're doing. Contemplate your hip hop. You're hip to your hop. Why are you hip to your hop? What does your hip hop mean to you? Contemplate it, my nobility. Face your fears, debate your doubts, and dish your disbeliefs. We're riding into a future. We're riding into a future that requires us to get back and stay and hold strong to our humanity. We ain't giving our humanity up to nobody. And anyone who stands in the way of our humanity, you're going to get knocked the fuck out. Guarantee it. You're not standing in the way of our humanity. When God strikes quick and God strikes hard, and everybody's going to know it was God that struck the New World Order down. They want to block humanity from humanity? No, don't participate. Don't participate in it, my nobility. Now is the time, and we are the people. We get back to our humanity through hip-hop, through the gift of hip-hop. The truth shall set us free. Contemplate that, and there it is. Peace and much love to you. Hey!